Everybody else is streaming right now, so I guess we're gonna go live with them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to Weather Center Live. We're gonna get started here in just a moment. We'll let a few more folks join us. Hopefully, we'll get a few more folks to join us. There's a lot of folks streaming the current events in the weather sphere, albeit, I think, dramatized just a little bit. There's not a significant amount to talk about tonight, but we're going to go ahead and talk winter weather, Arctic blast. We finally have our bona fide Arctic air mass coming down, and you can see on this static shot here, our Arctic thicknesses are definitely well off to the south, and they're just continuing to sink further south. And I even mentioned on my talk earlier today that you can finally tell that we really do have bona fide Arctic air moving across the Great Plains, the central portions of the lower 48, because you can see the textbook running up against the higher terrain features here. If you look, because of how shallow that Arctic air is, it's not going to be able to go through the terrain. It's not going to be able to go over the Rockies, so you can see it literally like a lava flow spilling up against the lee side of the Rocky Mountain Range all the way from Montana, even into parts of Alberta, British Columbia, sludging down like a mudslide, a landslide, a lava flow coming down due south, and it's expected to try to make a run at the southern plains, the deep south. It doesn't quite look like we're going to get our Arctic air all the way down that far. Excuse me, I'm a little tired. I'm sluggish today. But we are going to get cold. We're definitely going to get cold. It looks like Florida's going to miss out on the fun. Florida's going to be dealing with a lot of overrunning and return flow for the most part, so it's going to be very rainy, very wet for the next several days, unfortunately. Nothing spectacular, just wet weather. Very traditional for Florida. And you can kind of see it as we scroll quickly through our 12Z European model here. Cold plunge after cold plunge, but what's happening is we're trying to have warmer air advect out of the Caribbean, out of the western Atlantic. And what's happening is we're just going to have a continuous stream of frontal overrunning precip over Florida, maybe just along the Gulf Coast. Yeah, I've got my blue light glasses on. My eyes are hurting. I'm fairly tired. I'm going to start this live stream right out of the gate. I, first of all, don't anticipate a lot of people in tonight. I really don't. I'm actually really... I'll tell you the truth, I'm getting tired of YouTube. I really am. Not you guys. Not any of you guys tuning in. None of you longtime supporters. None of you followers, subscribers, faithful, community members. I think there's a bad pandemic going on, and it's winter weather extravaganza, let's put it that way. And it's really, Truthfully, I'm not only unsubscribing from a lot of different channels, but I'm also do not recommend. I've never seen anything like this before, and it's really starting to detour the way I look at weather, because there's a difference between sources out there who may not have the most education. I sure as heck don't have the highest education nor a plethora of experience. I have experience, but I'm getting, it's becoming more and more apparent that I really need to just do this and just focus on this camera and focus on you guys and stop looking at everything else. And that's why I'm saying, I'm unsubscribing, unliking, do not recommend, do not suggest, not interested on my YouTube, because it's turning to the point where it's discouraging me. And that's because I'm such a lover of weather. I'm such a lover of the science behind weather. I'm such a lover of trying to communicate the science, educate my viewers, continue to educate myself so I can educate you guys. And I love the genuine background of meteorology, not only just the exciting parts of it, but the scientific part of it. And, I thought tropical season was bad, but folks, it's getting rough out there. It's getting to the point now where I'm starting to see people just straight up lying and not using proper tools, using old data, which is, using bad data, using unreliable data, just to fluff the numbers, fluff their subscribers, fluff their viewer base, and it's very frustrating. It's pathetic to put it out there, boldly to put it out there. It's pathetic. It really goes to show who's really in it because they love weather and who's in it just for the sake of being a name of, oh, I know him. Oh, that's a great, channel, blah, blah, blah. And it's not even about the views or the traffic being low anymore. It's just the fact that it's disrespectful to the folks who do really care about meteorology. For starters, not even the views, not even anything. I'm talking if you boil away social media and all that, it's getting discouraging and it's getting disgusting that people genuinely cling to whatever it takes to get their name elevated. It's not even about you guys on some of these channels. It's about just them getting the clout, getting the notoriety, making it seem like they know what they're doing. And it's disrespectful to people who, like myself, invest hours upon hours upon hours upon hours upon finances upon finances upon finances, losing sleep, stressing over tests, stressing over content, stressing over briefings, stressing over continuing to educate ourselves on how to better communicate the weather, how to better understand weather for ourselves to eventually communicate it to you guys. I was joking around earlier with some of my family members who came over that at this point, I'm just going to do what everybody else does and just read models. And if that's the case, I'm going to just be like, hey, welcome back to Weather Center Nazario, guys. Here's the links to all the most recent model data. Have a good one. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Gosh, and it's a bummer. It really is a bummer. And this doesn't come from a spot of, I want my views to go up. I want this. I want that. Like, yes, obviously I want the right information to get across to everybody who needs it. But at the same time, it's so demoralizing that at this point, anybody could say anything. And as long as it has something exciting in the title, it's going to, capture views and you're going to get the boost and the algorithm's going to love you. And it sucks. It really sucks. At this point, it makes you wonder, why try to be truthful? Why really worry about the science and the education when all I need to do is say, historic, life-threatening, extreme Arctic air, and everyone's going to be like, dang, look at this guy. He knows everything. This is dangerous. We got to watch. And it's like, I even mentioned it on my TikTok first thing in the morning. Be leery of where you get your information for our folks in the South, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. And I didn't even look at anything. I already had a gut feeling when I shot my TikTok this morning. First thing in the morning. I'm talking like 7 a.m. I made sure at the very back end of that short 2-some-odd minute spiel, be careful, because I already know there's going to be people out there making this the most outrageous, the most life-threatening thing that's ever happened. And lo and behold, no sooner did the morning go on, I got back from the gym, I tuned on to the Weather Sphere on YouTube. Dangerous winter storm. First of all, there's no storm. What is everyone talking about storm? This is just cold air coming south, interacting with leftover moisture. That's where the snow's coming from. There's no storm out there. Like if I scroll through here, guys, do you see a storm? There's no storm out there. It's just the Arctic air coming down. That's it. Like, where are we getting major, rare, historic? It is dangerous, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of folks out there who are going to lose power. There's a lot of unfortunate animals, homeless individuals who are going to have to take the full brunt of this Arctic air and the wind chill at that. And that is very dangerous, and I feel for them. But I don't see where's this rare storm, folks. In fact, the weather is going to be very quiet the next 2 weeks. There's going to be nothing out there. Look at this. We have no major baroclinic systems. We have no major severe weather events. We don't even have any major winter weather events. There's nothing out there. In fact, I'm curious to see how this trends, because the only thing in sight for the next 2 weeks is what could possibly be happening in the Gulf. And look at this. This is getting close to my birthday. This is 23 January. It's only January 3rd. This is still 10 days away. Nothing out there. So I don't understand where people are getting all this extravagant business from. It's crazy. It's getting very crazy, and it's disrespectful to a lot of the big name meteorologists out there. And I'm not even talking about myself anymore. I'm talking about the folks who've been it since probably before I was even born, since a lot of my viewers who are probably born, people who've been studying this and living and dying by weather as a career. It's getting disrespectful. These people are stealing views from the folks who know 3,000 times more than I do, 3,000 times more than any of these other sources do. And it makes me question why I even, but Nothing against you guys. It's also been very rough in the personal department, too. Very exhausting. It's been stressful with other things. And I guess I'm just kind of going on a bit of a soapbox. Actually, I don't even know if I could call it a soapbox rant. This isn't about me. This is about everything I see going on. But yeah, that kind of sums up the live stream, folks. We're going to take a really quick in-depth look at what's happening over the south with this Arctic air. But I could scroll through here, and there's really not a lot on the horizon. We've got some weak waves that are going to come over the Pacific Northwest, northern Rockies, but as soon as they interact with that dense pool of Arctic air, they're just going to kind of fall apart. There's no severe weather, nothing big on the horizon. In fact, I'm really wondering what kind of content we could possibly make. And of course, I'm already seeing the folks going crazy about this small little band, that right there, this little small band of snow, extreme winter storm. First of all, that's not a storm, guys. That's just precip. I don't see a storm anywhere. That's nothing. There's probably not even a short wave associated with that. It's just, again, an interaction between air masses. Nothing catastrophic, nothing extreme, nothing rare about it. I even posted on my Instagram for you folks who follow me on Instagram. I blurred out the username of the channel I screenshot, but I put in there, are these people not from Earth? Like, have they not experienced a winter time before? Like, winter is just like hurricane season. There's a reason season is involved in the names. We have winter season, summer season, we have hurricane season. Like, with winter season, there's a peak of the winter season. We're getting into the peak of the winter season. That's why we finally have our Arctic air coming down. That's a trademark sign of the peak of the wintertime season. There's nothing rare about this. I know we have El Nino, but El Nino is not going to stop the northern hemisphere from going through wintertime. This happens every year. And I know, and this is something I can definitely testify to because I did 8+ years of synoptic analysis and I watched the different weather patterns. I watched when our Arctic gates would finally bust open and it would flood south. When our minus 40 degree isotherm in the upper levels, our northern branch or our Arctic jet would finally spill south. And our synoptic charts would look very busy. It's a routine thing. This is very routine. So I don't, it's crazy. I feel like some of these channels are not from Earth. They're aliens. And they don't know what winter is. So they're like, whoa, this is weird. I've never seen this before. Yeah, like... Even the GFS, if I come on over to the GFS first and foremost, actually I was already looking at this before we got into the live stream. I was taking a look at where some of these folks are getting the 12+ inches. We're not going to see 12+ inches in Texas or Louisiana or Mississippi, Alabama. In fact, I'm looking at the GFS and I'm like, even this I feel like is a stretch. 5 inches of snow. We'll have to see what shakes out, but like... I think this is a big stretch. I think we'll see 2 to 3 maximum with that small little wisp of precip that's going to come through. I'm more concerned about whether or not we're going to get icing, sleet, freezing rain down here because of that interaction between warm air and, the El Nino jet keeping our subtropical air mass a little bit further to the north. That could maybe be what's making it seem rare is the fact that our El Nino jet is well to the north of where it should be positioned this time of year. And that's why if I go back to my 1,000 to 500 thickness chart here, you can see our tropical air, our subtropical air mass, that 570 thickness line is right here over the Keys, over the Gulf of Mexico. But then we have our very, very frigid air encroaching on it and really just piling up on one another. We have an extreme contrast in thickness. That horizontal gradient of the atmosphere, that layering of the atmosphere probably looks like this because we're going from modified warm air all the way down to bona fide Arctic Canadian air. So that's probably why everyone's freaking out because they don't know how to read this chart. It's really not that crazy. Right now, in my opinion, this is a quiet day in the weather sphere. Some people are probably making it seem like it's the day after tomorrow out there. But in fact, this is more quiet than we've been in the last few weeks. This is a calm pattern right now. We do still have some residual lake effect snow going on with that previous winter storm system. That's kind of adding to bring up a little bit of snow totals, but we saw that coming. I mentioned to you guys a few live streams ago that Michigan was going to see quite a bit of snowfall as well as on the east side of the Great Lakes into the northeastern states like Pennsylvania, New York. Good lake effect. But again, that's not something we haven't seen before. What's the lowest temps you see coming to Florida, Nazario, and how far will it get? Honestly, like I said at the very beginning of the live stream, I think Florida's going to miss a lot of this Arctic outbreak, this Arctic invasion. It looks like because of El Nino, we're actually going to stay fairly mild and wet down here. If you look, our 570 line doesn't go anywhere. That's kind of what had me concerned with this next system that was supposed to possibly bring us another round of severe weather, but it turns out that cold front swung way up to the north faster than a lot of us were anticipating. So it really didn't have a chance to trigger a lot of that severe weather activity. The atmosphere was definitely primed. In fact, we could have had a very, very, very catastrophic outbreak here in the Central Florida Peninsula. Our dew points were very almost springtime. Our heat indexes were summertime. There were some heat indexes down in South Florida approaching 100 degrees. Like, we had some very good warm air advection. The atmosphere was ready to rock and roll. We just didn't have a trigger. We didn't have that catalyst come scraping through like that last squall feature. And prefrontal rains with the last one that came through helped to kind of subsidize the environment a little bit. And that's why as that squall feature rolled through interior Florida, despite what models were thinking, didn't really do a whole lot. We got some winds, and that was about it. Maybe some lightning strikes, but nothing as crazy as the Panhandle or further to the north of us here in the Central Florida Peninsula. But yeah, if you guys look at this, DPK, to answer your question, I think we're going to stay fairly mild down here. We might have some cool, crisp mornings, but looking at how much frontal overrunning we're going to have down here in Florida, look at that right there, all that precip that's going to be coming up out of the Gulf. And you can see that's textbook overrunning. And when I say overrunning, folks, what I mean by is we have a boundary, a frontal boundary just stagnant. It's a stationary boundary. And when I say overrunning, as the name implies, think of like a speed bump in the road when your car bounces over the speed bump. Same principle. Imagine your moisture are the wheels of your car, and as they go up, they condensate, and then they rain back down. And in this case, you go up the speed bump and then bounce over it. Same concept. You're going to go over that stationary boundary, and it's going to rain out, and you're going to see that more moist flow moving over top your boundary, creating a little bit of rainfall. Nothing crazy. It's just going to be kind of sort of gloomy. Not really a good time in Florida to go out and do anything, at least during the week. Like, look at all that. We have lots of frontal overrunning down there. And then it kind of clears out, but then you can see with that next high pressure that moves over top Bermuda, that overrunning scenario is going to come right back in, and there you go. We kind of get a little bit of residual rainfall here and there. Not a whole lot of moisture to tap into because of our continental polar / continental modified Arctic air that's still moving across the lower 48, trying to exit over the northeast. And then this is the only thing I'm looking at way down the road is another possible pseudo-subtropical system forming on our El Nino jet. I legit have to debate with people from Florida that were saying Idalia was a bust, like seriously. Yeah, and that's the problem is we have all these people out there. Oh, Pete, welcome in. Good to see you again. I've actually been thinking about you, sir. I haven't seen you on Instagram, or we haven't communicated at all really recently, so I hope all things are well with you. April, Idalia wasn't a bust, but she could have been much more stronger than she was if it wasn't for the dry air and the wind shear and the SAL. I do agree with that. I very, very heavily agree with that. Idalia could have been a much more catastrophic storm and was slated to be a very dangerous Category 4 hurricane. But again, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily let people tell you it was a bust. I would say we got lucky. And I know a lot of folks are just going to come at you and say, it's because you didn't know what you were doing, but it's true. Idalia was a genuine instance of where we got lucky. We barely ever have hurricanes undergo an eye wall replacement cycle and weaken just before landfall. Usually, I've noticed this even before studying anything meteorological, it seems almost like our landfalling hurricanes near to the United States or a major continental landmass, they almost seem to undergo rapid intensification before they hit. It's almost like a very, very weird defense mechanism kicks in all that latent heat exchange in the core that just suddenly lights it up like a firecracker and it blows up before it lands. Is February really the worst time for Florida in terms of severe weather during El Nino? Also, CPC is expecting the El Nino pattern to really take over in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Based off of what I'm seeing here and the fact that we have something possibly blooming up in the Gulf of Mexico, I do think that maybe we are going to start to finally see another resurgence of El Nino. Kind of goes back to my car metaphor. We're going to finally fire up the horsepower, crank the nitrous up a little bit before El Nino burns itself out. I'm growing a little more concerned every day with our upcoming tropical season. Our models and our climo are in full agreement that we're probably going to have very elevated sea surface temperatures once again, just like we had last year. And the problem is we're looking at not so much of a neutral Enso oscillation, but more of a La Nina now, more of a elevated to moderate La Nina, which not necessarily means more landfalls, but that means more favorable conditions. Again, the dry, dusty air is the one limiting factor that we really can't forecast out. We can sort of watch what happens over the Saharan area of Africa, how their trade winds and their monsoonal flow sets up. I forget the exact terminology of it, but there's a specific term that describes their wind pattern that helps to produce a lot of that dust that comes off of Africa. We can watch that by April, May, but with La Nina, that basically, for all intents and purposes, I hate to put it this way because this is going to sound like hype, it almost opens the gates of hell for the tropical Atlantic, because that's where you have Katrinas, Ivans, Charlies, Wilmas, because we're going to have not necessarily neutral conditions, but very, very favorable mid to upper level atmospheric conditions. That's kind of another way that the oscillations in the Pacific affect the overall atmosphere during a tropical season. El Nino, obviously, 2023 taught us lessons, but El Nino is usually synonymous with bad wind shear, bad conditions in the upper levels for these systems to form off of. Neutral usually means we have some wind shear, we have like a neutral atmosphere. You know, you could have some very powerful storms, you may not. It's a neutral playing field. It's kind of like a level playing field, no handicap one way or another. But La Nina, that is more, now you're getting into the bias, and we've talked about this for my returning viewers. We've talked about this, that La Nina means now we're going towards that positive bias. We have our hot waters, our very good ocean heat content, and now our models are trying to lean more towards a favorable bias. 2023 was an unfavorable. Yes, way in the Atlantic, we had lots of storms. It was very active, but nothing close to the Caribbean, nothing really close to the U.S., and a lot of the ones that tried to make a run for the United States, if you remember, and in the Caribbean, November was a fantastic example of that. They died. They just couldn't do it. La Nina, on the other hand, that's, again, opening the gates of hell for any kind of tropical wave to blow up and tap into all these abnormally hot waters. So I'm slowly but surely just growing a little bit more concerned that people are not going to be taking this hurricane season as serious. And I have a bad feeling because of all the hype and the con artists out there who were going crazy last hurricane season, there's going to be a large chunk of the general population who are going to look at us trying to tell you this is a bad situation, and they're going to think, this is exactly what I heard last year and nothing happened. Why should I take this serious now? And that's going to be a problem. That's when you're going to have people getting hurt. That's when you're going to be playing with people's lives. More on that as we move forward, but I'm not liking the fact that we could be transitioning into a elevated, if not full-fledged, moderate La Nina as we get into the heart of hurricane season. Couple that with our latest Climo data suggesting we'll be on average 2 degrees Charlie warmer, where these storms tend to favor development during a cool neutral or a cool season like a La Nina. Yeah, I'm letting everybody have their fun now, hyping up a couple inches of snow and going nutso with these winter storms, but I really hope they really dial in their content. They're probably not going to, but I really hope people start dialing their stuff in, because when we have major hurricanes knocking on the door of Caribbean islands, Caribbean nations who don't know any better, you're going to be playing with people's lives, and that's another thing that's making me mad, is all these people just bold-faced, almost lying in their content. You're toying with people's livelihoods, people's properties, people's loved ones, and I don't like that. That makes me mad internally, Let's go over to our National Weather Service blend of models for the South, and let's take a look at what our NWS blend of models are thinking for the total snowfall. I'm seeing a lot of rage going on out there, mentioning that we could see upwards of 12 inches. And again, I'm not seeing that. This is our most recent blend of models. And for our snowfall, you want to use ensembles. There's a number of different tools you want to use when forecasting snow, and no one's using them. Everyone I've looked at that's made me mad internally is not using them. They're just going off of total snowfall, total snowfall, total snowfall. You're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. I would be getting shouted at if my leadership in the Navy or prior Air Force weather caught me just using that one tool. No, I'd be getting 30 lashes. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, they wouldn't do that, but you guys know what I'm talking about. So ensembles, National Weather Service blend of models is a great ensemble tool to give you a rough estimate, an average of what we're looking at. And again, it looks like the key takeaway is there's some very, very isolated areas that could see approaching half a foot, very small band. Depending on how long that precip band of wintry weather can stay there, that's really going to determine it, is how long it stagnates out there, or if it's going to be a very quick wisp in the pattern, which it could very well be because we have so much jet activity in the upper levels. Key takeaway is, between maybe some trace amounts as you get closer to the Gulf Coast, and then a couple inches at best, maybe getting a bit more sporty as you get closer to Tennessee, Virginia, and closer to the Appalachian Mountain Range. The same thing with the SHREF. The SHREF has also been right in the line with what exactly the National Weather Service blend of models is thinking. And I'm even looking at 24-hour total snow with the SHREF. This is the Short Range Ensemble Forecast. And you look at this, and the SHREF is going for even less. It's thinking we could peak at about 4 inches, which is very realistic. With a cold blast like this, with the actual Arctic air coming south, interacting with some leftover moisture, you are in a very good, good source area, if you will, for some dendritic snow growth, a really good glaciation of these air parcels. As they try to turn into water droplets, they become a little bit more, they bang up against one another and they form those ice crystals that turn to snow and come down as snow, especially when you have a totally frozen temperature profile from the ground all the way up. So this is very realistic, and again, we're getting into Tennessee, getting to those rolling hills, getting closer to the Appalachian Mountains. That makes a lot of sense. If you notice, the SHREF is really favoring our higher snow totals as you start getting into the windward side of the mountains. Everywhere else, the SHREF doesn't even call for snow as far south as Louisiana, interior Mississippi. It misses Georgia, parts of Alabama altogether. Looks like the Carolinas, maybe North Carolina could get some trace amounts, a little bit of light dusting from snowfall the further west you go. But yeah, I'm seeing people, and they're using the bad model data. They're using the unreliable stuff, and that's also what's got my gears. It actually really grinds my gears, as Peter Griffin would say, because no one uses these models to predict snow, first of all, so why are you using it when you know they're going to give you fluffed amounts? That's like when you know dang well you're not going to get a Category 5 hurricane on the 18Z GFS, but you're reporting Category 5 for, like in November, guys, if you remember, Category 5 storm for Jamaica, 18 Zulu GFS, 250 hours out. This is happening. No, it's exactly the same concept. You're using an unreliable model with very unrealistic totals, and you're not even using the proper snow total models. I love, and this is exactly what I've been talking about to you guys, too. If you look, notice how on the left-hand side here, the SHREF has 6-hour snowfall, 24-hour snowfall, and then total overall. I love these tools to get a general baseline of how much snow we'll see during certain storms, how much snow we'll see for a whole, average on a day-to-day scale if you have a longer lasting or a larger scale storm. And then you could look, down the road and see exactly how much you'll get if you have a bunch of different storm systems like we were previously predicting rolling through the same general area. And I'll bet you 10-1, if we look at total snowfall for the next 87 hours, we never get close to that 12. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. I'm seeing 12 plus inches. Whoa, look out. And this is now 87 hours out. This is the 17th of January, and at max, the SHREF is thinking 4.3. 4.3. There's going to be a lot of people out there disappointed because they're getting their weather information from people who don't know how to use tools and how to properly actually forecast. I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine who works at the squadron, the schoolhouse I actually went to tech school in back in 2012, Keesler Air Force Base. It's very discouraging for folks like us. She's been in weather for a long time, obviously. Folks like Pete in the chat have been in weather for a very long time, have studied it, have learned all the different rules of thumb and forecasting techniques. And I think a lot of folks who come to us on YouTube and watch our videos, they don't realize that looking at these charts, that's not forecasting. What I'm doing right now, guys, is not forecasting. I'm literally looking at what the models are thinking. There's a big difference. Forecasting goes on behind the scenes. That's why if you guys have been longtime viewers of my channel, you'll see me with notebooks, with notes, with little tidbits, with sticky notes. That's where the forecasting comes in. If we looked at models and we called that forecasting, why the heck would National Weather Service or NOAA or NASA or big name television studios require meteorologists to even call themselves meteorologists without a degree? You guys in the chat right now could technically be meteorologists if all meteorology was. Yep, looks like the 21Z Shref is calling for 4.3. There's my forecast. No, that's not forecasting. That is not forecasting. Don't get it twisted, folks. And that's why we come in to help you guys out and understand what it is we're thinking and what we are actually forecasting, because there's a lot more that goes into it than simply scrolling through charts. But you 10 to 1 if you guys go to another channel, unless they are a reputable source, and ask them, what's initialization and verification? They're going to be like, exactly, Up north here, no snow on ground in Minneapolis. Projected lows overdone with thickness values, no albedo factors to keep sun's energy at bay. That's another thing, guys. It's another thing is we have to for all the folks who are going crazy about Winter Storm Ember and the, quote, historic 40-plus inches of snow we were going to get, first of all, you need 40 inches to stick. Second of all, you also have to factor in that as the sun comes up, you're going to have runoff, you're going to have melting, you're going to have the different types of inversions throughout the day. You have a frontal inversion, you have a subsidence inversion, you have a radiation inversion. Bet you 10 to 1, a lot of folks won't even know that if you were to ask them that. Describe a subsidence inversion. They'd probably be like, well, that's this, and no. But anyways, let me stop getting into roast territory. Like, there's a lot of other factors that also go into snowfall. It's like if you were to take an ice cube out of your freezer and put it in the fridge, the fridge is cold, but can it support ice? No. Same concept there. And we also just had that previous winter storm that brought us the severe tornado outbreak in the south, bring nothing but warm air and rain up there. So all the 40, 50 inches of snow that was forecast was probably long gone immediately. On top of the warm advection that's going to naturally... And, you'd be surprised, guys. You can go up to the north and see snow, but if it's even as so much as 40 degrees, 35 degrees, and I've seen it before. I used to go up to Mount Lemmon in the Catalinas in Tucson, and it would be below freezing up there. But believe it or not, as Pete was just mentioning, the sun's energy, whether the surface temperature or not is at or below freezing, will radiate some of this snowfall out. And it's cool because you could go up to the mountains and you could go see where you never see any of the sun shine or the sun's energy beating down in that one area, because you'll see how snow is lingering even in 40-plus degree weather because it's shrouded from the sun. It's shrouded from the UV radiation. It's in a nice snowdrift area for it to kind of just linger. Even if the air temperature is warmer than freezing, it'll still stick around because there's no sun beating down on it. There's no rain. There's nothing to mix it out, melt it away, push it away, etc. Snow is a very interesting phenomena. And, a lot of people don't give it the credit that it deserves because they just think of it as, are we getting a white Christmas? Am I going to school? Am I going to work? Am I going to have to break out the snow shovels? And that's it. But there's a lot of really, again... Goes back to what I said at the beginning of the stream, why I'm getting kind of discouraged. There's a lot of science that goes into what snow even is. And we're losing all that. We're just going extreme. Look at 4.3, deadly, look out, run, and then subscribe, follow, blah, blah, blah. Yes, perfect forecast. No, that's not how it works. And then if you look at this here, I also just now noticed, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I haven't really been toying around too much with what Pivotal Weather has on their sites, but I did not realize that they even have an observed snowfall analysis on their page. And if you look at the 72-hour snowfall, where is this historic snow that's been happening? Because you look up right in through here, very isolated areas, which is where we were calling it. We had our heaviest snow band. We were expecting it to travel right up in through here. And that's where you're starting to kind of get above a foot of snow. But the general area, even up over the Rockies, if you look, over the Rocky Mountains, the really higher terrain features all the way up from like We're talking 6,000+ feet in the air. We're talking a couple miles above ground level. We're not even seeing record-breaking totals up there. And look at the Northeast. All the folks out there who were supposed to get historic totals, in the last 3 days, they've had nil to no snow unless you're right up against or on top of a mountain. And the part that really frustrates me as well, and this is more of a personal gripe, not a professional or weather gripe, it's me and my common sense. You have all these people flocking to these channels who will claim that claim that all hell is breaking loose. But then the problem is, if I were someone who didn't like weather, didn't study weather, if I was just, a personal trainer still or a mechanic, didn't know butt from elbow about weather, if I tuned into a channel and I saw them saying, this is bad, this just got worse, this is getting worse, again, there's no storm systems out there, and I'm still seeing this is getting worse. Like, what's getting worse? There's nothing out there. There's nothing happening. If I go, look at this, watch, let's go over here real quick. This just got worse. I mean, yeah, maybe for content creation, that looks pretty bad for us. There's nothing to hype out there. That looks pretty scary for some of us. But I'm still seeing this is getting extreme and this is getting crazy. And it's like, this happens all the time. Like, we're kind of in the northern hemisphere. And last I checked, it's November through, sometime in March. It's called winter. I thought that cold and winter and snow and big baroclinic systems, was kind of what happened, in a winter. Just like in the hurricane season, you kind of get something called a hurricane. It's not called hurricane season because you're going to get blizzards, And the point is, guys, what I'm saying is, as a recurring viewer who doesn't know weather, why are they not coming back to these pages after a situation doesn't happen and saying, hey, what happened to you forecasting this and then nothing happened? What gives? No, these people keep going back. And I'm starting to feel like some of these viewers out there are only in it just for the entertainment factor. Guys, look at how crazy that snowfall is. That is terrifying. And people they feel like they're watching a reality show. They don't even really care about what is actually happening in their local area. Do not get me started on stupid space news like asteroid coming to Earth 5. Yeah, honestly, at this point, we should have had Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck up in the air like at least another 2,000 different times over the last several years because of an asteroid on track to destroy all life on Earth. Snow stays longer in shades, at least from what I saw in January of 20. Yes, it does. It does, because you don't have any of that ultraviolet radiation to burn it off. Here's the kicker. Most folks don't realize that the Gulf of Mexico can warm surprisingly fast in the warmer months, no matter how cold the winter season gets. Yeah, people don't realize that water is not only a great conductor of electricity, but of also heat. That's why we have lake effect snow. That's the basic principle behind lake effect. There's a lot more to it, obviously, but the basic takeaway is you have cold air overrunning the Gulf, not the Gulf, excuse me. I remember you wrote Gulf, so I'm thinking Gulf, but you have colder air overrunning, there's that term again, overrunning the warmer, I use quotes because it's relatively warmer. Obviously, if you jump in the Great Lakes, you're going to die of hypothermia, but it's relatively warmer than the air above it, and that's what produces that condensation and precipitation of the lake effect coming right off of the lakes because you have your warmer waters interacting with the colder temperatures coming out of the north. And typically the reason we get it towards the southeast is because obviously your cold air is funneling in from the northwest. But yeah, so, we really don't have a lot on the immediate horizon. And even the GFS, the doom and gloom model out there, really doesn't have a whole lot for us to talk about over the next few weeks. And again, we have some baroclinic systems that are trying to come on the Pac Northwest. Pardon me, I don't know why I'm stuttering so much. But as soon as they run head first, or I should say face first, I like to describe it like that. As soon as they run face first into that brick wall called Arctic air, you can see that they wash themselves out entirely. There's just not a lot of jet support because we have all of it down towards the south. If you look here, there you go. We don't really have a whole lot of very potent jet support for these systems to stay strong. And our Arctic air mass is finally trying to make its way out of Canada. And that's also, remember when I said to you guys that it can be too cold for snow, too cold, just like it can be too hot, too, etc. for anything. It's kind of the same principle here. So are you forecasting or running a talk show, dude? Just shut up. Ronnie Butler. Dude, this is kind of what we do on our live streams, is we have a conversation and we talk. That's kind of why it's a live stream. If I wanted to do a forecast, I would do a video. There's really not a whole lot to forecast out there. We're just doing a live discussion on what's happening. And if you don't like what I'm saying or, the facts, I'm okay with it going from 78 to 77 concurrent viewers. We just went to 81. Pardon me. It's my professional opinion. So if you don't like what you're hearing, then by all means, and I mean that with all due respect, we're not really forecasting here. There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes, as I just alluded to forecasting. I'm not going to do it on here and watch you guys or have you guys watch me in silence reading and writing things. But anyways, that's kind of why we don't have much to talk about. We do have a big ridge, and I bet you 10 to 1 we're going to start seeing folks mentioning how our pattern is about to shift because of this giant ridge that's going to help to pump in some warmer air once again and get rid of this Arctic air. And it kind of lines up extremely well with what we were just seeing on the Euro, with how those lower thickness values try to escape out of the northeast and over Quebec of Canada. We have a nice big old ridge that's going to build in and warm our temperatures up, and I think that's why slowly but surely, if you look at this nice... Oh, I don't have my Epic pen up. Let me pull that up real quick so I can draw for you guys. If you look at this nice troughing in the jet stream over Mexico just to the south of the Baja Peninsula, I think that's why our models are slowly thinking we might get a little bit of cyclogenesis down here in the Bay of Campeche, the extreme westernmost Gulf. So let's see. Because I have also started to slowly see weather pattern, big shift again, and it's really not a shift. There's really no such thing as a shift in the weather pattern, in my experience. And I wouldn't say in my experience, but in my opinion, you really don't see a big shift in a weather pattern until you go into a transition season. Like right now, we're really not going to see any big shifts because of the way the long wave pattern sets up. Let me see if they have, do they have a 5-wave chart on this? Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Perfect. So this here is going to be a huge mess to look at for you guys. I'm not going to expect you to understand what you're looking at, but essentially what a 5 pattern or 5-wave chart looks like, or what a 5-wave chart shows you, is exactly what the jet stream is doing across the northern hemisphere, or the top of the planet. We're looking at the top of the globe face down, pointing at the Arctic. And this is actually a great tool for you to use, and I never see anyone pull this up, but this is a great tool to use if you really want to try to do some very long-term forecasting. Like, for example, how far? Oh, we're really far out in the time right now. Let's go back. So if you look, one could suggest that our pattern is probably going to start to get amplified and go crazy once this big old area of jet energy can finally move out of Japan, out of Asia, and come through the Aleutian Islands past Hawaii. So it's still a little ways away, but if you look, what's happening here is our jet is simply doing what it's supposed to do for the winter time. And that's why it seems like our pattern's going to shift. But it really, in my opinion, it's not going to shift. And I'll kind of elaborate instead of talking in circles. I apologize. But essentially, when I see people say big pattern shifts or the weather pattern's going to change, what that tells me is for an extended period of time, we're going to be looking at a totally different layout of our atmosphere from top to bottom or bottom to top, however you want to look at it. And during the winter time, we're going to start seeing a lot more aggressive long wave troughs, long wave ridges, blocking patterns, because we have cold air punching south out of the Arctic, out of the poles, and so on and so forth. So when I see gigantic troughs or I see big ridges, that's not a shift in the pattern. That's just the pattern being the pattern. That's the pattern. We have a meridional and we have a zonal pattern. Zonal patterns are typically what we see during most of the spring and especially during the summer. That's why everyone is hot, because our jet is fairly weak. We don't have a lot of really good temperature discontinuity providing us with a strong polar front jet stream at 300 millibars. That's why the subtropical jet rules during the summertime and why we are able to form tropical systems. There's not a lot of cold air. There's not a lot of temperature discontinuity. There's not a lot of wind shear. I mean, unless you have an El Nino, but that's a totally different characteristic. It's a favorable time of the year in the northern hemisphere for us to see our tropical cyclones across the planet. That's why it's not only going on in the Atlantic, but in the Pacific and even further west thereafter or east, however you want to refer to it. So here in this case, what's happening is we're just ebbing and flowing with the wintertime pattern. We have our polar front jet that gets a lot more aggressive, hence the name polar. And then during the summertime, when we finally do see our pattern shift, we're going to stop seeing the gigantic long wave troughs and these gigantic blocking ridges and these huge fluctuations in our temperature because we're going into a different time of the year, a different pattern. So that's why I don't really agree with a pattern shift. It's just a pattern transitioning. We're going further down the road, further downstream in our jet stream. With every trough, there's going to come a ridge, and that's actually a wonderful way to look at life, to tell you the truth. And I've actually mentored a few old troops saying that you got to look at life like weather. When there's bad weather, there's always a good high pressure back behind it. When there's a trough bringing in all sorts of negative energy and negative bad weather, there's a good old ridge coming in right behind it to calm things down. It sounds really nerdy and cheesy, but when you really sit and think about it, it's true. Whenever there's some bad stuff going on in life, you got to remember it's going to get better. And unfortunately, when you're in a good, brief period of, peace, tranquility, all is right with the world, eventually God or wherever you kind of lie your faith, it's going to test you and things are going to get dark, so... But yeah, so it looks like over time, as we finally get some more aggressive jet energy in, we're going to see some more extreme weather systems, however you want to describe it for your viewing pleasure. But right now, it looks like we're going to finally get a break. There's a lot of diffuse jet stream flow, not only over Canada, but over the United States. And it's usually when you see these very, very aggressive, straight line-looking jet maxes on these charts where you can typically predict there's probably going to be a pretty big storm system with that. See, look at how this jet gets very diffuse, very spread out as it gets close to the west coast. These jet fingers, these very weak and spread out split flow jet fingers are not really going to do anything for our weather pattern. You want very concise things like this. Areas that look like this, areas that look like this. Even these weaker ones could support some low pressure development, some strong storms, some shortwave troughs at 500 millibars. But seeing these very diffuse jet areas that's spread out, not really going to do much. Yes, Pete, exactly. Exactly. We're in a recharge mode. Kind of sounds like where you are, where beginning of the vid, wise grasshopper, take your own advice, wisdom. That is very true. It is very true. I need to start getting more into the habit of practicing what I preach. And you're absolutely right. You're definitely right on that one. I won't argue. All right, let's see here. What else do we want to look at? What else do we really want to look at? Because honestly, there's really not a whole lot to look at. We have our snowfall, and we're going to have to watch closely exactly what unfolds down over the south. Let's see here. What I want to look at now actually is going to be the possibility of seeing some freezing rain down there, because I think we should be focusing a little bit more on that. Freezing rain is far more dangerous than snowfall in of itself for the south. Let's go to the southeast United States. Let's see what the sleet forecast looks like. This is our 6-hour sleet. Yeah, see, so sleet is going to be a threat. Nothing too ridiculous, though. It doesn't look like our sleet model is thinking that we're going to have a torrential sleet event. I wonder what our forecast skew-Ts are looking like down in that area. Let me switch over to mean sea level pressure, and forgive me if I'm ad-libbing or ab-libbing a little bit, but I want to see if we have any kind of sounding out there. Oh, this is way too far in time. I need to go back. I want to see if we have any type of sounding out there that could suggest we could have a possible severe freezing rain event. Oh, yeah, look at that. Actually, we could. I mean, that's a pretty giant warm layer, so maybe not so much, but this would be sort of indicative of freezing rain. Obviously, this warm layer right here, from here to here, is not going to provide us with freezing rain. And it looks like we dip back under freezing temps and warm up above freezing just before those droplets, if it does precipitate, hit the ground. So this could maybe be a sleet setup, but even then that's pushing because that warm layer is pretty big. Let's see. Let me go forward in time just a little bit. Maybe I should go further to the north to see if we'll get freezing rain. Yeah, this skew T sounding doesn't look... Okay, now we're starting to get into freezing rain territory. This is definitely not snow, though. If you guys live in Louisiana, especially getting up towards Shreveport or the northern central portions of Louisiana, you're not getting snow based on this forecast sounding. This is a very discombobulated, and we're not saturated. Look at all this dry air up there. Definitely not going to see snow. We want a temperature profile that is entirely behind that 0 degree line. And this here is starting to look a little bit more like a possible sleet/freezing rain event. The warm layer is starting to shrink, and now our surface is definitely below freezing for those water droplets as they fall to start coming in a little bit more or starting to ice over. There we go. Now this is even more potentially representative of freezing rain. And then let's see, it looks like we're trying to, okay, now we might see some light snow flurries, if not bona fide sleet. And here, guys, you have a nice frontal inversion here and then a subsidence inversion above ground level. So we have two different style of inversions going on over here. We have a frontal inversion in the first couple hundred or a couple thousand feet above the surface, and then a subsidence inversion. So this could possibly provide us with some sleet or some freezing drizzle. We'll have to see exactly what happens. But by then, it looks like our actual moisture has moved downstream, so this might not do anything at all. You would need that precip and that moisture to be right overhead, and it looks like we could possibly see some ice pellets or freezing rain just looking at this forecast sounding. Now, see here, this right here, wherever Ronnie went, now we're forecasting. Now because I'm not looking at a model. I mean, I am, but I'm not looking at precip type, precip accumulation, what the models are thinking. I'm looking at our sounding and where our moisture is, and now we're doing a little bit of forecasting. We're investigating what our temperature profile looks like, and we're doing a bit of actual forecasting. That is forecasting for you guys. Looking at what a model says, right over here, and saying, yep, look at that. Look at those orange things, those yellow things there that we're going to get sleet. There's our sleet. That's my No, see, what I'm looking at is the model is thinking sleet around 12 Zulu on 16 January. Let's see where this is 12Z on the 16th. Okay, so actually, yeah, look at that. We're right on the money. Now it's starting to add up. We're looking at our forecast sounding for 6 Zulu. Let me go forward in time. Let's get 12Z up. And as we just mentioned, this could possibly be a sleet scenario because now we are fully underneath the freezing line. We have a little bit of decent moisture in the low levels, and we have subsidence that could provide us with either freezing drizzle or some very light sleet, which is exactly what the model is thinking right here. Now we're forecasting. You see where we're going with this? It's not just reading a model. You're looking at a whole bunch of different things at once and coming to a conclusion. And that's the difference. Anybody, you guys out there, I'm not going to disrespect you all by pulling up a chart and making it seem like I'm a genius because I can do what a kindergartner can do and say, Miss, I see color over Louisiana. It's coming. Obviously, I'm not going to disrespect you guys. What we do is we look into all sorts of different model parameters. And our forecasted soundings are lining up with exactly where the model is hinting and whispering to us at possibly getting some sleet. And right here, if you look, there's where the very, very light chance of getting some sleet or ice pellets lines up. And if we go back to 6 Zulu on our forecast sounding, bam, perfect. So I actually agree we could get some sleet. We have our moisture right in through here according to our little sliver of model data. We have very good ample moisture in the low to mid levels of the environment, and then subsidence just above that with a warm layer. So this could possibly be freezing rain, if not a sleet event. There you go. So sometime on the 16th, as we go into early morning hours, that would be a preliminary forecast. I'd probably put out a watch. I would definitely, if I were actually at a forecast desk in the central Louisiana area, I'd put out a winter storm watch or whatever type of WWA they have that encompasses sleet, ice pellets, freezing rain. For us in Air Force weather, we actually had a freezing rain watch, freezing rain warning, which was severe weather criteria for us. You can actually look over here too and see what our PWAT, as some people would call it, our precipitable water, 1/2 inch. Obviously, we're not looking at rainfall here, but what this tells me here is we actually do have some moisture in the atmosphere. Same thing with our 43% relative humidity that could help induce a little bit of precip. So I would say between the hours of 0Z to possibly, let me go forward in time again. If this were me actually forecasting for that little red dot that you guys can see here, I would say I'd probably put out a freezing rain, if not a sleet watch, starting any point between, let me look at the sounding again, right about there. I would say sometime around like 3Z, I'd put a watch out and run it until 12 Zulu. That's when I would let it expire. I would do a 03Z, maybe even a 10 Zulu. I would do like a 3 to 4 Zulu to 10 Zulu universal time watch for sleet, ice pellets, freezing rain for central Louisiana, wherever this area may encompass a populated area of that area. And there you have it. There's a small little sliver of the process behind forecasting. And obviously, you can go even more in-depth with that. You can verify how other models are doing. You can initialize how the models have been doing in comparison to analysis data to determine if you want to use that, if the forecast sounding lines up with our actual observed upper air sounding. There's so much that goes into it, and that's why, to tie this live stream into a full, nice little bundle for Christmas this upcoming year, well, I'm getting upset that folks are out here claiming to forecast and all they're doing is reading colors on a picture. You know, if you want me to really boil it down, that's all this is, a picture of the U.S. with colors on it. Obviously, there's more to it, and you guys all know that, but if you didn't know what this was, it's literally just a photo or a digital image of the country with green on it. You know, and anybody can do that. I can give a 5-year-old this and ask, where is it going to rain? The green, Mr. Nazario. There you go. So I would honestly be looking for more of a wintry precip style event in central and northern Louisiana. Let's see what the sounding in northern, yeah, even for northern Louisiana, look at that. We get a little bit of a warm layer right there, and we are well below freezing on this temperature profile. Does it actually create a substantial warm layer, though? Ooh, yeah, look at that. Now, see, what I'm seeing here, guys, this could definitely be more of a freezing rain event. This is not going to be, this doesn't look like snow to me. This definitely looks a lot more like freezing rain, like textbook freezing rain. Let me go back up a little bit. Like, especially here, we would want a bit more of a warm layer. That's a tiny little warm layer. So, again, this could be more of a sleet or ice pellet event. But this is not snow. This definitely looks a lot more like we could see a sleet, ice pellet sort of scenario. Maybe scraping in to get a little bit of a snow setup overnight when the sun isn't shining, because it does look like our temperature profile right there does start to go fully frozen, but then we get a lot of dry air in the mid-levels. And then as we go through the next day, yeah, this could possibly be like a freezing drizzle, freezing rain type of event. We'll have to see if we actually get a lot of snow up there. I just saw someone in the chat mention Arkansas. Let's go up to Arkansas and see what our SKU-T looks like in Arkansas. We'll probably get a wonderful, there you go. See, I was going to say we'll probably get a wonderful image of what a snow sounding looks like. That looks like snow for sure, without looking at anything else. If I had to pull up just a SKU-T and tell you guys if it was going to snow in Arkansas, boom, definitely going to see snow. We got really good relative humidity, really good precipitable water values, 1/2 inch. So we have water in the atmosphere in a totally frozen profile. So this is definitely going to be snow. Arkansas is going to see some pretty good snowfall. What about Mississippi? Because could they see some, oh yeah, look at that. It looks like Mississippi might get a little bit of snow up there, unless that transitions to possible freezing drizzle or freezing rain. It looks like it tries to develop a warm layer, and then we lose a lot of our moisture, and that temperature profile and that dew point, or that temp and dew point line, start to spread out a little bit, so we dry out some. Hell of a lot of shear. That's a strong jet that's coming through. Look at that, 118 knots of shear. Obviously, this is not shear that needs to be brought up about severe weather or anything like that, but it just goes to show how much jet energy we have in the upper levels, bringing all this cold air down from up north. But pretty cool stuff. So you saw what looked to be more of a bona fide freezing rain / sleet mixed precip sort of skew T sounding, and then we saw a bona fide snow sounding as well, which is really nice. You guys could see exactly what that looks like. Do I have anybody with any questions in the chat before we round out the live stream? Very cool. We got to see that though. Does that look like a heavy snow event? No, by the way. Let me put it to you that way to add a little bit more or an extra layer of forecasting to you. Would I go heavy snow for Arkansas? Just looking at a skew T? No. You don't want to look at just a skew T to forecast heavy snow, moderate snow, light snow, blizzard conditions. There's more to it than that as well. You see the 90-mile-per-hour sleet event in Portland? Ooh, I don't think so. Wow. That's scary. 90-mile-an-hour winds with sleet. That's terrifying. It was probably the 90-mile-an-hour winds that helped bring down the air temperature even more to help with that sleet event. Twilight Firefly, hello there. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you. I really didn't say hello to everybody tonight, and I do apologize for that. It's very disrespectful on my part. So hello, everybody. Ethan's Life. How close are we? Amanda Kirby. Carmen, welcome in. Andrew, welcome in, by the way. Mick and Marley, good to see you. I know I responded to you earlier. Same with April. Super Charas. Who else do we have in here? Zenful, welcome. Who else? DPK, hello, good evening. Corbin, welcome. Thank you so much for you guys taking some time out of, your evening, your Saturday night to join in. JC Ray, if you're still there, thank you very much. Black Bear 71, second time Maine floods in 4 days. That's terrible news. There's been a lot of rainfall up there. We've been so focused on snow from a lot of our weather sources that we've forgotten that it actually has been raining a lot too. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for joining tonight. Yeah, the warm nose was prominent. Thanks for the chart comparison info. Oh, you're very welcome. Glad you got to take something away from that. Sometimes I tend to talk in circles, and I don't mean to. But, yeah, there's a lot of layers to forecasting, and that's why we have the forecast funnel. You know, you want to start big and then funnel it down, as the name implies. And that's basically what we did there. We looked at our big scale charts or our synoptic to macro scale charts, and we went all the way down to the local scale, the micro scale, by looking at a skew T. That was some basic forecasting right there. So technically, with what Ronnie was saying earlier, even though we were also conversating at the same time, we were in the midst of generating our forecast. We were just still in the upper tiers of the forecast funnel. We were still looking at big picture macro scale. And then to wrap up the live stream, went all the way down to the micro scale, and now it looks like Central Louisiana should probably be on the lookout for a winter weather advisory, winter weather watch, or maybe even possibly, I think they have ice storm advisories and warnings as well. They could possibly see some really good freezing rain, icing up there, which would definitely impact any sort of travel. You definitely don't want to fly around in that. That's dangerous for aircraft. Don't see a lot of people talking about that either. Aircraft and icing, even if they have some de-icing equipment on the airline or the aircraft, whatever's in question, you don't want to dork around with that. And the fact that we also have a bulk shear or a general wind shear total of 100 plus knots from 850 to 200, you definitely don't want to fly in that because that's going to bring in some very, very intense turbulence. So wouldn't be surprised if you also looked at some of the airline charts, products, etc. And, Superchars and Amanda Kitty has a question. Superchars, snow possible this winter for any of us near Florida in the southeast? Not anytime soon, unfortunately. From what I'm seeing, El Nino is going to keep our tropical air way too close. And in fact, I think we'll have 1,000 to 500 thickness here. And you look, way too many red thickness lines. It looks like right here we might get a little bit of a cold snap down here, but even that's a stretch with all this modified rainfall and these thickness lines stacking up from Lake Okeechobee down near Fort Lauderdale and all the way back up. It looks like we're going to be very warm and mild. Well, I wouldn't say, I use the term warm loosely, by the way. Whenever I say warm, I don't necessarily mean like 80s and sunshine, shorts weather. But when I say warm in comparison to some of the very cold temperatures that we have going on in the Dakotas, near the Great Lakes, and so on. Do you think our next hurricane season is going to produce a hurricane prior to the season technically starting? That, Brooke, is a very good question, and it's very, very up in the air. That's going to really be determined, I truly believe, by what El Nino does. If we can see El Nino crash and burn before June 1st, it's very possible because we're going to lose that wind shear. And we'll even lose the wind shear in that unfavorable upper level setup for our tropical development happen as El Nino is still weakening. You don't need just a little bit of El Nino and then wind shear. No, it's going to be a slow and steady transition. And as we come out of a moderate and go into like a weak El Nino to a warm neutral, you're already opening up a favorable environment for hurricane season. Mick and Marley, what am I reading right now? She was attacked by a pit bull 2 months ago and her liver is really bad. Big decisions to make. Thanks in advance. I missed this whole what is going on, and I am so sorry if you're talking about Marley. I got to scroll up in the chat. Face it, you too sciencey for the... I guess so, honestly. Maybe that's why my views are so down and I haven't really been growing much. Although we've hit 6,000 subs, so I mean, I guess we're still slowly squeaking up there. But Mick and Marley, what is going on? I really hope that's not Marley you're talking about, who was attacked by a pit bull. And her liver is really bad. Big decisions to make. Thanks in advance. Drop in the chat real fast. I'm guessing you are talking about Marley then, since you said thanks, Carmen. She is my Willow. Willow isn't here tonight. Or maybe she... Oh, yeah, she is here. Never mind. She's in the background. I didn't know you snuck in here, mamas. She's falling asleep in the background right now. Are we going to get some cold breeze? Destiny, where are you at? Are you down here in Florida? For central North Carolina, that is going to be close. I think if you go further west, you'll definitely see a very subtle dusting. But we can switch on over. Let's go to the Shref, and we'll switch over to the Mid-Atlantic. And we'll take a quick glance before we round out the live stream. Because I do notice that they are trying to bring the snow totals up, our ensemble members. There you go. I mean, in this case, looks like way out in time, by the 17th, you might see an occasional flurry or two. But it looks like our snow band is going to move right up in through, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, into the northeast states. Still need to brush up on my geography. I do apologize, folks. I know. But central North Carolina, it's going to be very iffy. If we can see it wobble a little bit further to the east, just as I've told other folks, in terms of wanting snow in the Carolinas into Virginia, we need these systems and all that to kind of bump a little bit further to the east. They've been shooting up towards the Midwest and the Great Lakes, and that's why we haven't gotten any snow. We've been on the warm side of these systems. Mick and Marley, I will definitely keep Marley in our prayers as well, especially being such a huge, huge, huge animal lover myself. I mean, this is coming from the guy who even struggles to kill certain bugs because I know that they're living beings. I feel for animals sometimes a lot more than, because they just don't know any better. They give us unconditional love. They give us all sorts of unconditional emotions, whereas humans sometimes, they're a lot more treacherous than even the most dangerous of animals. Ethan, have a good night. Thank you very much for joining in, and I have not forgotten to get back to you about your question later on. I'll talk to you more offline on Instagram. Trinidad, West Indies, Caribbean island. Oh, okay. So, that's also kind of a toss-up. Let's go down there, and I do feel bad that I've been neglecting the Caribbean and all that. I haven't forgotten about you guys. I just know we haven't really been seeing much. There really hasn't been any major punches of cold air down there because of El Nino, once again, keeping the jet moving across the Yucatan, southern Florida, parts of Cuba. But, yeah, even then, it looks like our fronts are really not. It looks like this one might be able to make it down. Even then, though, it doesn't look like we're going to get cool air, though, just looking at our thickness lines. Here's our 570 line. So here's all your tropical air down here, and this could be very, very modified air. 540 line is way up here, so 1041 high over the mid-Atlantic states, and this is 228 hours out. This is interesting. And actually, I want to show you guys something very interesting I saw. I think it was yesterday on the GFS. I'm so grateful that no one grabbed hold of this, because this would have caused chaos in the weather sphere. But let me see if it's still here. Which run was it? I saw something very spooky on the long-range GFS. Maybe it was 12Z yesterday. Let me see. 12Z GFS down in the Caribbean. Let's see, where is it? No, it's not there either. When was it? Was it the 0Z yesterday? Because I know I saw something on these models, and I was like, oh, wow, that's very spooky to see, especially this time of year. I can't find it now. This is going to be hard. Maybe was it 6Z, one of those outlandish runs? Nope. Never mind. I can't find it. Try one more model run, and then I'm going to start ending the stream. Nope, I can't find it. But anyways, guys, I saw something that was funny. And obviously, it's not going to happen. But I actually saw one of these GFS runs spin something up here and then go up like this. And I'm like, uh-oh. Uh-oh. That's all I thought was, oh, shoot. That's not good. If anybody else sees that, tropical cyclone for January, no, God, But yeah, it was very spooky. I saw something. I saw that classic frontal tail out here. And the next thing you know, we had a nice little red low right here spinning around and moving up to the north and forming into something. And literally sat there. I was looking at my phone, looking at it, and I was just sitting here like, no, please, God, no. It's way too early. It's way too early. I mean, I'm already stressing out and losing sleep over all these people claiming that every single storm that happens in the United States now is going to be in the history books. And I saw that, and I'm like, oh, hell no. No, please, do not add that to the mix. That's just going to add also, well, let me see, was it 18Z today? Am I just, like, having a brain fart right now? No, see, and this kind of makes sense, though, although this does look interesting. This looks like, to go back to, I forget who it was, but somebody had mentioned that even CPC is saying we're going to see El Nino kick in. The GFS, even though this is 18Z, this does look a lot like El Nino. It looks like we're going to have our Gulf of Mexico low riders coming through again. Obviously, there's going to be lots of adjustments to this, folks. This is a continuity run of the 18 Zulu GFS, so take this with an extreme, gigantic grain of salt. But we'll definitely have to keep that on the horizon or keep our eyes open, because it does look like our El Nino setup is going to start firing up again. Dang, I really want to find that model run now. That's going to bother me, just so we can all get a laugh. Let's see. Nope, not here. 0Z on Thursday. Maybe now we're getting closer, because I did see a little low stamp right there. 18Z on Wednesday. I don't think it was this far back. Yeah, nope. But, I mean, nonetheless, so the key takeaway here is, if you notice, El Nino, at least according to the GFS, is expected to start ramping back up again. So we might have to start investigating the possibilities of seeing some localized severe weather for us, specifically here in Florida, as El Nino begins to fire up again. Because that's kind of what I'm taking away from here, is even though I know this is GFS and we're looking way, way far out, and I know everyone out there is going to be like, why are you forecasting off of that far out? It's like, I'm not forecasting that far out. What I'm saying is the trend, the thinking, the overall thinking is our pattern is going to look a little bit more representative of El Nino, so we'll have to watch as we go forward. We're starting to stop seeing those systems forming here, because if you guys think about it, for the last couple of weeks, and in fact, I'll honestly say the last several weeks, if you guys remember, and we've said it even on this channel a number of times, that our source area has been right in through here, and our systems have done this. A lot of our systems have either done this or this. They've taken one of two tracks almost, but El Nino definitely has more of those lower latitude, low pressure systems, our low riders, as I've liked to call them, during this El Nino winter. It does seem like we are going to start seeing our lows forming here and moving this way. So that could possibly, I'm saying an extreme possibly, because, obviously this is getting to the end of January into February. We could possibly, as we've already alluded to in the chat tonight, start to see our severe weather risk for Florida in particular going back up as we get a resurgence of our El Nino Gulf of Mexico low pressure systems. We haven't seen those in a little bit when you think about it. It's been since maybe November, if not very early December, when we did the first storm chase. We haven't seen any of those lows for. It's been about a month, actually. It's the 13th. It's been about a month since we've gotten a low pressure in the Gulf coming across like this, supported by our El Nino jet and our El Nino characteristics. So we'll have to take a look at that as we move forward in time. Let's see. I think it was around January. Yeah, there you go. Right there. So right about mid next week is when we'll have to really start investigating the Gulf of Mexico particularly. It looks like the general thinking long range is the CONUS is going to be quiet. We're going to get a few more Arctic plunges. You know, by the way, for all these people saying rare, you know, it definitely doesn't look rare anymore, considering we're just going to have plunge after plunge after plunge. For it being so rare, it looks like we're going to have a rare month then, because obviously Arctic. There's Arctic. There goes Arctic again. You know, for something that's so rare and historic, it sure as heck seems like it's going to happen for the rest of the month. Gee, I don't know, because we're getting into the heart of winter. But I digress. But yeah, it looks like as we get into the middle parts of next week, ladies and gentlemen, we will really be amping up how much investigating we're doing for the Gulf of Mexico and for us along the Gulf Coast and Central Florida, because we're going to start seeing that subtropical jet posture itself to become our dominant jet feature. There you go. Yep, right over top the southern Gulf. I mean, the upper Gulf, southern United States. Yep. Right there. There you go. You see it firing on all cylinders. You can see all this really robust jet energy coming across Baja and Mexico. So we're going to have to see exactly what happens. But all right, that's all she wrote. We're going to go ahead and end the stream. We are about 15 minutes over. I've lost a lot of my concurrent viewers. Probably lost a lot of subscribers, not going to lie, because of how bold and ambitious this live stream has been. But you know what? It's a part of the game. It's a part of the process. Sometimes you got to be okay with getting your feet and your hands dirty when working in any type of industry, weather included. So thank you all very much for taking some time out of your Saturday night. I know this is not a traditional live stream. I don't know if I'm reading it right, but I saw an article about 2024 hurricane season that said we may see our first developed storm by May 13th. You know, I would not put a timestamp that specific on it, but I do think, you know, and when you guys think about it, our waters were so hot, we did technically have an early start to the hurricane season this past year, because Tropical Storm Arlene plopped itself in the Gulf of Mexico at the end of May. It just didn't take on a name until June 1st, which is technically, you know, right on time with the calendar hurricane season, but for all intents and purposes, you could argue that's early. You know, usually we roll into hurricane season. There's a couple of weeks, if not a several week period where nothing happens. We're just kind of like, oh, yeah, it's hurricane season. And things don't start ramping up until late July, August. We might get a stray named storm between then. But 2023 was an early start. And it was an early start because we also had Brett, Cindy, and Don right after that in June. So, you know, Brooke, I wouldn't go as far as to say by May 13th, but I would say by May, yes, we could have our first named storm if and only if El Nino does really crash and burn. We'll go ahead and wrap up the live stream. Twilight Firefly, thank you very much for taking some time out of your night to join us, and I do hope to see you again very soon. As we get ready to wrap up the live stream, let's see what our latest anomaly climo data is thinking. So that's March. April, May, so on, I don't know why I said that. I don't know why I said that, but it does look like by March and into April, we're going to start cooling off and we'll start going into our cooler anomalies. So technically right here is already approaching warm neutral. So we'll see a lot of our wind shear out there start to shut down, and this is March. So by April and especially May, we'll really start to see our upper level conditions get a little bit more conditionally favorable for tropical cyclone development. And then by June, start a hurricane season. Yet we are in a cool neutral. And then there's our La Nina by peak hurricane season. And look at how, I'm telling you folks, look at how warm the Atlantic is. Literally a cesspool of hot water. And I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. You know those hot, like nasty smelling sewage waters that are just naturally warm because it has all those, nasty pollutants and just garbage in it. I genuinely mean it. And I don't mean literally like obviously garbage, but like that's going to be some warm water. And where you see these reds, and especially in the Caribbean right there, that scares the living daylights out of me, genuinely, because I know a lot of my 6,000 subscribers come from the Caribbean. We just had someone in here a little bit ago talking about how they're in the Caribbean. Where is she? I know she was just Destiny. I don't know why I wanted to say Vanessa, but Destiny from the Caribbean. That worries me. Not for the United States. The United States, unless something blows up in the Gulf, that's a problem. But most of the time in August and September, we have a lot of long track systems. But that concerns me for my folks in the Lesser Antilles, the Greater Antilles, Jamaica, Cayman Islands. I haven't seen them in a while, but I know I have a number of people from the Cayman Islands and Jamaica in here as well. I'm worried about you guys this year. Genuinely worried. Because we saw a lot of our storms do this in the El Nino steering pattern. We could possibly very well, next hurricane season, with as hot as the waters are right there, and this La Nina trying to establish herself, we could very well be tracking. Like, we could honestly, and then this is going to be in the hype territory or the scare tactics, and I don't mean to, but I'm being honest because I've seen it before, and I know a lot of you guys have as well. We could possibly be looking at hurricane seasons to where we just see our doom and gloom on the horizon, and we're just kind of waiting until SHIT hits the fan, to where they come off the Cape and just like this, and just terrorize everybody in their path. Because with a La Nina, not only are we going to have very favorable conditions across the tropical Atlantic, but we're probably going to have some very, very well-established steering currents over the Atlantic as well. So yeah, next hurricane season, we definitely do not want to drop our guard. We do not want to use 2023 to kind of set the stage for what 24 is going to look like. We're literally that. And now this right here is a pattern change. For everybody out there saying the weather pattern is going to get crazy, that is a shift in the weather pattern. We're literally going to go from El Nino to La Nina. We're going to turn the whole thing upside down like the Poseidon Adventure. Whole thing's going to capsize. And that's crazy. That's why I'm very concerned. In all of my years of even just looking at the weather as a happy-go-lucky young boy, I've never seen it go from a very strong El Nino back into a La Nina so fast. Like, it's going to be a night and day difference. I actually bought into a neutral pattern way more than La Nina, but to see us, and even big names in the game like CPC claiming we're going to be in a La Nina, that is wild. We're literally going to go from one end of the spectrum to the other. Complete reverse, Uno reverse to everybody out there in the tropical Atlantic. So we're going to have our eyes wide open. And as Brooke had mentioned, we might have to have our eyes open as early as May. Because this year it almost happened. We just had El Nino covering our butts. We're not going to have it, obviously, this year. We're going to have favorable setup. So June, July could get very exciting. June, July could definitely have systems blowing up like our Bretts, Cindy's, and Dons, and Arlene's, and just not fizzling out because of El Nino. Just a thought, just a hypothesis. But thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Before I go on another long tirade, we're going to end the stream. May see you tomorrow, may not, but we'll definitely be back here on Monday to talk weather, and I may even do a full-fledged Weather Center segment. We'll see. I'm kind of liking the casuality of the live streams, especially when there's not a whole lot going on, because we can just talk and hang out as opposed to doing a full-fledged editing and all that fun jazz. So, yeah. Good night. Thank you for sharing great information. Destiny, you're very welcome. April Brooks, the Caribbean is more concerned than we are in the United States because storms affect. Exactly, yep. And that's exactly why I'm prioritizing. Like, as I get ready to start forecasting the tropics, I am prioritizing our Lesser Antilles, number one. So if anybody out there is still watching my channel despite not being in the tropical season, I'm prioritizing you guys in Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados, our Windward and Leeward Islands first. You guys are going to be huge on my radar next hurricane season. I'm looking at my family members in Puerto Rico. I'm looking at everybody in the Dominican Republic and Haiti, Jamaica. I'm watching big. I'm watching Cuba, the Bahamas. I'm not forgetting the Bahamas. The Bahamas got lucky last year. They didn't see anything. Same thing with Bermuda. Bermuda dodged some bullets, and I don't think we're going to have too many storms wandering towards Bermuda, to tell you the truth. I think with a La Nina, we're going to see, like in that research paper we saw, we're going to start having to watch our Gulf Coast and the west coast of Florida. Shoot, we might even have to watch the space coast of Florida, because we might have systems coming in like Lee did last year, and just without hooking north, they could just keep going straight through, a la Hurricane Andrew, Hurricane Francis and Jean and all that from 2004 even. So the whole thing is going to change up. The whole thing's going to change up. And we're going to have a lot of people in harm's way. And you can guarantee that while everybody else is out hyping these storms, whether it's winter, spring, springtime on planet Pluto, Weather Center Nazario is not only going to be here in the Weather Center providing you guys with the round-the-clock updates, but he's also going to be getting himself out there in the middle of these battlegrounds, wherever they take shape, to show you guys what's actually going on. That's another guarantee to any new viewers who may be popping into the chat tonight. That is one way I plan to elevate this channel, is to not only sit here in the comfort of my office talking to you guys, because anybody in their right mind can talk weather and explain to you how bad a situation is going to be, and then clock out, turn the camera off, and go to bed or go back to whatever it is that they do. But one thing that I've already shown you guys, even though a few of the situations have been a bit more or less not as of bad weather as we were predicting, when the big one comes, and it's going to come, I know it's going to. I can guarantee you that. I can put everything I have on the line to tell you that, regardless of if it's here in Central Florida or not, we're going to have a bad one this year. I know we are. With the way the pattern is setting up, we're going to have at least the one star. Everyone says it only takes one. This year, I have a bad feeling we're going to have that historical storm, especially with our ACE values already going up and the atmosphere trying to set us up for a favorable overall environment. Hot water, good wind shear, no dry air, lots of humidity. Weather Center is going to be on the front lines for you guys. I'm going to be right there, because there's a difference between looking at computer models and actually being out there to provide that live analysis. Obviously, I like the thrill of the chase and I like the excitement, but I also want to be there on the front lines to show you guys and explain what's happening and potentially help anybody out there who may need the help. Haven't had that situation pop up just yet, but for hurricane season, we definitely will be in harm's way. I can guarantee you. That's for sure. I'm getting married October 26th. I do hope we won't have a hurricane at that time. I live in Louisiana. I know you live in Louisiana, Amanda. I know for sure. We're going to have to watch. We're going to have to watch, because La Nina is probably going to be strengthening as we go through August and especially September and October. So even though we had a lot of tropical storm Vinces last year that never formed up, we could have Vince times 5 for real this year if our favorable setup continues. So, but yeah, and also congratulations, by the way, for sure. Hope the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast to get a tropical storm with all the rain. You mean hope the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast won't get a tropical storm because of all the rain, Scott? At least I think that's what you're saying. We'll start getting a little bit more into the weeds about the tropics once we get out of winter time. We're still far away, so we can speculate and hypothesize, but we're not putting anything into stone. What I am putting into stone for sure is, if we do have a La Nina, regardless, it's going to be bad. Regardless. And that I can lay my whole soul down on the table. La Nina, not good. Even before the water started to really warm up, La Nina was always synonymous with an above-average hurricane season. You strip away everything else, and I see your comment, STGRY. You can call it hype, but again, you can go through all the history books. I'm not saying anything else. Not landfalling, no dates, no intensity, no water, nothing. El Nino, synonymous with a not-so-busy hurricane season, which was a lie last year. La Nina, synonymous with a bad hurricane season. And that is fact. If you guys out there want to call it hype, call it hype. It's your, whatever, misfortune if something comes your way and you live along the coast. But I've seen it since I was 12, 13, even 10 years old. When we've been in a La Nina pattern, you just naturally have far more aggressive storms out there. So the part that I'm concerned about now is the fact that 2023 obviously won the battle against El Nino. What happens when El Nino isn't there to protect everybody? That's what has me concerned. So that's what has me concerned. Oh, that's okay, One Nation. Thank you very much for joining us now. You're catching the very back end of it. But we finished up our discussion of the lower 48 in the last 15, 20 minutes. We've just been kind of looking at what our models are thinking for hurricane season. But yeah, hype would be if I was trying to say Florida's going to get 4 storms and they're all going to be Cat 5. That would be hype. That's hype. And I think hype is so tossed around nowadays that we really don't even know the true definitive version of hype anymore. Hype is what we've been seeing of this all winter, honestly. 12 to 30 inches of snow when we realistically know we're going to see like 3 to 4 inches. That's hype. That's definitely hype. Me saying we're going to have a busy hurricane season as we transition to La Nina is literally fact. You can fact check. Go email Reed Timmer, email Jim Cantori, email the Weather Channel and all that. And they'll tell you, yeah, La Nina means bad hurricane season. All right, let me change the verbiage. La Nina means above average hurricane season. I'll even strip away the bad adjective, above average. And the fact that we're going from forecasting a neutral to a La Nina is scary. No one's going to be expecting that, kind of like Strike Weather saying screw La Nina. I agree. Multiple Gulf El Nino systems for January. Oh, yeah. It definitely looks like the general thinking is we could start to see that low-latitude jet beginning to form up again. And if you want to consider that hype, then I don't know anymore. What I'm saying is, and I'm not predicting it, I'm saying that the general thought process behind our models, the average thinking, is the jet is going to establish itself a little bit more predominantly across the south, so we could possibly see more of our low-latitude systems symbolic of the El Nino, kind of like how Closar was mentioning. CPC is thinking we're going to see the full effects of El Nino here very soon, especially as we get into February. Which means we will likely see those more lower latitude, low pressure systems starting to regurgitate themselves again or resurge again. Because we haven't seen them since early to mid-December. The last one was about this same time in December. It was about the 12th or the 13th, if I'm not mistaken, because I was out chasing the one down in Venice, out in Tampa. And that was it. Ever since then, we've been having everything forming up over the Oklahoma and Texas panhandle and moving up towards the Great Lakes or the Northeast. So El Nino is very symbolic of those low pressures moving through the Gulf, and it does seem like our long-range model data is kind of hinting towards we're going to need to watch the Gulf for development as opposed to over central and southern plains. Yeah, there's a big difference. There's a huge difference. Whether it be the low-latitude El Nino cyclones or the hurricane season, that's definitely facts. You can ask anybody who even has the remotest inkling, as Walter White would say about weather. El Nino, not so good hurricane season. 2023 was a special case. La Nina, active hurricane season. Like, even without the hot waters, when you see a La Nina on the table, National Weather Service, National Hurricane Center, Climate Prediction Center, Colorado State, University of Arizona, everybody out there who puts out preliminary forecasts, they already bump their numbers up just because they know La Nina means favorable tropical Atlantic, not so favorable Pacific. So we might actually see the Pacific calm down just a tad this year, and the Atlantic is going to ramp up. So we definitely have a lot to watch. 2024 is only getting started, and we've already had a major weather outbreak within the first couple of weeks. Luckily, we were spared the second one. That front was way too fast moving to really destabilize and trigger a lot of that bad thunderstorm activity we could have seen. Isn't La Nina drier for the south? Yeah, I think it is, but some people say it's not. Yes, well, it depends on the time of year. La Nina during the fall and the winter is technically drier because of the way our upper level pattern establishes itself. It kind of, like, if you look at it, El Nino has us situated like this, where the southeast is getting a lot of rain and you're above average in terms of your temps and your lesser humidity in the north. With La Nina, it shifts. Not literally like this, obviously it's not going to be wet down in the southwest, but, it kind of reverses the effect. Which, if you guys kind of theorize with me for a second, if during El Nino seasons we saw a lot of the storms do this, and you put 2 and 2 together, La Nina would suggest that we're probably going to see a lot more storms doing this. And that is definitely a theory. That's a big old theory. A big theory that is kind of supported by this, too. Nope, that's not the right one. That's not what I wanted to show you. This is what I wanted to show you. That theory is kind of supported with this information here. So this is neutral hurricanes. This is La Nina hurricanes. Notice how a lot of them tend to favor more of a west-northwest track until right about this 80-degree longitude line. That's when we can get sucked up back to the north by troughs and other large-scale weather features. But regardless, we're going to have to watch, because look at how these Climo records suggest we're going to have a very, very prominent anticyclone over the Atlantic. And it actually looks like during the cold season, on average, we tend to have more formation right in through here where our waters are the hottest. So again, I'm telling you, the writing's on the wall. The writing's on the wall. If you don't want to dig into the science and do the homework on it and call it hype, then feel free. But I'm doing the homework on it. And right in through here, statistics show that during cold years, which is La Nina, the number of Florida landfalling hurricanes minus the number of East Coast landfalling hurricanes in 5 by 10 degree box for cold years. It looks like during cold years, if we have any kind of development near the Azores, can you delete ink? Any type of formation between the Antilles and up and through where the Yucatan Channel is, Florida is likely to get hit. And there you go. This is another thing that's kind of concerning as well. Number of formations per cold year. This is an average census for the number of tropical cyclones that form in these latitude and longitude grid boxes, and look at these red numbers. So on average, this is the area I'm going to be watching. And I'm kind of unveiling my forecasting secrets for this next hurricane season. But I'm going to be watching these areas in particular. I'll even highlight this general area as well, because we do see numbers start to increase. And even the western Atlantic, right up in through here, looks like we get greater formations during La Nina years. This is where I'm going to be really paying close attention to. It looks like we have a good chance at seeing some long trackers forming, but on average, this is typically where during our cold season years, La Nina, they tend to form in this area. So that's going to be my focal point whenever I open up the models. I'm going to be watching through here, watching right through there. Can I get my cursor back? Yeah, there we go. I don't know why La Nina always has to come back. Well, El Nino tends to ebb and flow a lot faster than La Nina. We have a weaker El Nino, unlike the very, very strong, aggressive one we have. It can only hold out for so long. CFS Monthly has Florida really above average for February. Yeah, this is what I keep falling back on, too. And I know that this is Climo model, and again, I'm probably going to get some backlash for this. But this is also what I'm really looking at big time. Like, my eyes are wide open times 2. One Nation Weather, I don't know if you're still there, but this has been standing out to me big time. So I'll go back to January 1st of 2023. And if I scroll forward in time, there's June, July, August, September, October, November. And if you notice, January 1st of 2023, our Climo models, particularly the Canadian forecasting model, was thinking that the hurricane season, even at the start of last year, was going to be a quiet one. We weren't going to have too much activity. So even as early as January 2023, if we were doing this same discussion at the beginning of 2023, if we were to rewind 365 days and we were having the same tropical conversation, we'd all be in here saying, man, it's going to be a boring hurricane season. El Nino's ramping up. There's not really going to be much happening in the Caribbean or the United States, and we would have been right. We would have been right. So I'm going to stop right here, August 2023. This was the prediction. Watch this. And this is, again, One small breadcrumb that has me very nervous about this hurricane. Well, not nervous, but very concerned for some people. Did you spot the difference? Let me know if you spot the difference in the chat. That is an enormous difference. So I would not be surprised if once the official sources start to release their preliminary cyclone or tropical cyclone forecasts, we don't be surprised if we see very, very outlandish numbers. I know tropical storm risk, TSR, is already going to try to break 2023 numbers. They're already trying to push 2023 numbers and possibly surpass that. The folks over at Weatherbell, wow, they're like full. If they were at the Texas Hold'em tables in Las Vegas, they're going, boom, all in. They got the royal flush. They're going all in with their hand. 25 to 30 named storms this hurricane season. 25 to 30 named storms. That is supplementary name list and beyond. And as a matter of fact, we'll go ahead and get ready to close out the live stream for sure this time with that Weatherbell hurricane forecast. This was 2023. So they went marginal. They went low on 2023. 10 to 14 named storms, 5 to 7 hurricanes, 2 to 3 major hurricanes because of El Nino. This is their prediction for next year. 25 to 30 named storms, 13 to 17 hurricanes, with almost double-digit potentially major hurricanes. 5 to 9 major hurricanes. And guys, if you think about it and you kind of create a hypothetical ratio, we had how many was it? We had three major hurricanes this year. Idalia, Lee, Nigel. Did Nigel make major hurricane strength, or did he stop at 2? I think he made major hurricane. Oh, no, 4, excuse me. Franklin. We had 4 major hurricanes, 1 hit. So we have a 1 in 4 shot of someone getting a big major hurricane landfall. That means we could possibly have 3 major hurricane landfalls this upcoming hurricane season. 3 major. Not to mention, we might have a couple landfalling low-end hurricanes, and we might have a couple landfalling tropical storms, couple landfalling tropical depressions. So the odds are not stacking in our favor. With an average ACE score of 200 to 240, an accumulated cyclone energy of 200 to 240. Oh, and there you go. Actually, look at that. My numbers are right. I didn't even notice this. My numbers are right on the money. Here, they have it right here. 10 to 14 impacts, 5 to 8 hurricane impacts, 3 to 5 major hurricane impacts. I promise you, I did not glance up at that. That's right there. They even have their own little ratio broken down right here. So 3 to 5 major hurricane impacts. The forecast map has no areas receiving below average tropical cyclone activity. The highest areas are expected to be in a cone of 2 to 3 times the average aimed at our coast, which includes the Caribbean and the Bahamas. Further details will be on the seasonal forecast next year, but wanted to get this out early to you. It appears the climate hypothesis that this El Nino could reverse quickly is quite possible. So it ain't just me and a few other selects hyping the hurricane season. We have actual legitimate folks who've been doing the weather for a long time also sizing up this hurricane season, and they're thinking not good at all. But anyways, now we're really going over time. Thank you very much. I don't know what's going on. Team Double Dip El Nino. We're getting a lot of spammers in here for some reason. I don't know why. Getting a lot of spammers in here recently, which is weird. But that, if you don't want to listen to me, listen to a sort of official source, because they are real meteorologists, degreed meteorologists who run Weatherbell. They have one of the better weather sources and weather sites out there. I have yet to use it because their membership is expensive, but Lord willing, I could move into using them very soon. Not anytime soon because it's a little pricey, but one of these days very soon, perhaps for the tropical season. But yeah, there's folks out there really sizing up the 2024 hurricane season, and it's not looking good. It's not looking good. It's going to literally be a night and day turnaround from from this year or this past year. So we got a lot of work to do. I got to really build some momentum on this channel before all the scare tactics and the theorists out there take over. Because if there's also one thing for certain, not only am I going to be putting myself in the paths of these storms, but I'm also going to be trying to give you as realistic of information as possible. And you'll know, because I've said it before, I've gone against the grain several times on this channel before. If there's nothing happening, there's nothing happening. I'm not going to blow it out of proportion. If there's something happening and you start hearing me using terminology you don't typically hear me using, you know something's going down, and that's a sailor's promise, especially now being in the Navy. Sailor's promise, God is my witness, I'm not going to give you any kind of fear or scare tactics on this channel. I've never come into that thinking that. So if you tune into this channel down the road and you see me saying, get the hell out of its path, take shelter, please evacuate, you know for certain it's going to be bad. You know for certain. And I'm sure I won't be the only one saying that. Because I've been in bad situations before. I've seen how bad these hurricanes can get, particularly for Central Florida. And I'm not going to tell you to get out of the way of a tropical wave or a tropical depression. In fact, a lot of my longtime viewers know I was very upset during the end of the last hurricane season because there were a lot of people throwing around life-threatening, extreme, and there weren't even any named systems out there. Save that. Just keep that on reserve for when the major hurricanes do start rolling through. Then encourage your viewers to take shelter, get out of harm's way, and protect yourselves. So yes, and Sharon, I think the Gulf Coast needs to watch a little bit more this year. I definitely do. And actually, yes, Maddie, Brownsville, Texas, I do agree. If we go into a cold La Nina, yes, we're going to see these storms probably favoring a more westward path. So I am thinking Texas, Louisiana, the Gulf coastline needs to really be alert this year. They need to have a baseline strategy of how they're going to get prepared when the time comes in advance. If you start looking at those strategies as a storm is brewing, you're going to get caught with your pants down, and everyone's going to flock to the grocery stores, and things are going to go downhill fast. You're not going to like it. I agree, Joe. I definitely agree. We don't want another Ian, but unfortunately, the odds are starting to stack against us. I do think we want to, and if you want a preliminary expectation I think we should set for this hurricane season, you should anticipate another Ian and be ready just in case, especially with the odds we're going into. If those numbers or anything close to those numbers pan out, the probabilities of you getting a major hurricane on your doorstep go up in comparison to last year. Last year we had a lot of systems, but the steering patterns and the shear closer to the United States didn't really support them, so we had a lot of good probabilities. This season, especially if we go into a La Nina, we're going to have a lot of odds working against us. So we want to go into this hurricane season believing we will have another Ian, we will have another Ivan, we will have another Wilma. And then, Lord willing, that doesn't happen. I'd rather bust on a major hurricane prediction I'd rather false alarm on a major hurricane prediction versus bust on a major hurricane prediction. I know I'm going into this hurricane season. I genuinely mean this. I've already told my family. I've already told my friends. I'm going into this hurricane season ready. Like, I'm going to have everything ready to saddle up and, hit the deck because it's not looking good. It's definitely not looking good, and I'm definitely more than happy to provide you guys with some key steps and some key tools that you may want in your house, in your apartment, in your condo, in your townhome, wherever you reside, on how to kind of create a baseline strategy on how to prepare for everything. Flooding, roof leaks, window leakage, window breaks, car submerging, evacuation, etc. Now, see, take when you ask that, Amanda, another Katrina, take that and strip away the specifics. Because when I say yes, I don't literally mean a southern Florida landfall and a New Orleans landfall. When I say another Katrina or another Wilma or another Ivan, I mean a storm that causes that much damage and gets that strong. That's what I mean. I don't mean specifically it's going to hit this area and you're going to get hit. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying this hurricane season, we have a greater chance of seeing more Katrinas, more Ritas, more Ivans, more Wilmas, more Charlies. Ians, more destructive hurricanes. We had a lot of hurricanes last year, but none of them were really destructive. They didn't really hit anybody. But when it comes to destructive hurricane seasons and destructive systems, this hurricane season and maybe even the one after that, if we stay in this cool Enzo oscillation, could also be a destructive year. But all right, guys, I do apologize. We're going to do a very, very fast-paced outro. We're already approaching 2 hours. If you have any other questions, comments, or concerns, please drop them in the comments section below or drop me a line on my Instagram, TikTok, or my Twitter/X. More than welcome to reach out to you. More than welcome to reach out to me at any point in time, regardless of the time of day. I will always get back to you guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Pete, thank you very much for coming in tonight. It was great seeing you, sir. I'm glad to see you still up in the chat watching, and I do appreciate the comments and the collaboration. Sharon, ST Gray, 852, Maddie, Scrooge, April, how close are we? Everybody, Destiny, Judy, everybody have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I hope that we can talk again very soon. I'll definitely be back on the channel again very soon to talk more winter weather, and as we go along, I'm going to definitely provide these every other week, if not every other, or I shouldn't say every other month, but every other week, if not month-to-month updates on the tropical Atlantic season, because as we go month-to-month, we're obviously going to see changes in our El Nino, changes in our climo predictions. We'll start getting more of those preliminary forecasts, so we'll be discussing these things as we move forward, and I'll even start I'll even start brainstorming ways to better help with preparation and what to look for, what to look out for, what to watch for, etc., just to help everybody out who's interested, all right? Kevin, thank you very much for joining in. Everybody out there, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Saturday, a great rest of your weekend if I don't see you tomorrow. But until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.